You know, when we think about the world's greatest explorers, names like Columbus or Magellan, they always pop up, right? But what if I told you that the true masters of ocean exploration had already conquered the largest ocean on Earth thousands of years earlier? And they did it using nothing but the sun, the stars, and the feel of the waves right under their feet. This is the incredible and kind of overlooked story of the ancient Polynesians.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the 1770s. Captain James Cook, the most celebrated European navigator of his time, is sailing right into the heart of the Pacific. And everywhere he went, from Hawaii all the way to Easter Island, he kept finding these islands. And they were inhabited by people who all shared a similar language and culture. And he was just baffled. I mean, there were thousands of miles from any continent, separated by the most intimidating ocean on the planet.
He actually wrote this down in his journal in 1778. It's a question that would puzzle the Western world for centuries. How did a people with no charts, no compasses, none of the fancy instruments Cook relied on, how did they manage to populate a chunk of the globe that's bigger than all the continents combined?
And that, right there, became known as Cook's Great Question. It's a historical mystery that really challenges our whole definition of exploration and, frankly, technology. For a really long time, the prevailing European theory was basically, well, it was just dumb luck. The idea was that a few fishermen got blown off course, their canoes just drifted aimlessly, and they happened to wash up on a new island by pure chance. It was just easier to believe in a bunch of crazy accidents than to accept that these so-called primitive navigators had pulled off something that Europeans couldn't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, but the evidence, it tells a completely different story. This was not a story of accident. It was a story of pure mastery.
Just look at these migration patterns. You can see this wasn't random at all. In fact, many of the longest, most difficult voyages, like the ones to Hawaii and New Zealand, were made directly against the prevailing trade winds and ocean currents. Now think about that. You don't just drift against the wind. This was intentional, it was planned, and it was absolutely deliberate exploration.
And this wasn't some quick event. This was a patient, multi-generational expansion that unfolded over thousands of years. It was a systematic, step-by-step process of discovering and then settling, just pushing further and further and further into the great unknown. So if it wasn't an accident, how in the world did they do it? Well, this gets us to the heart of their genius, the incredibly sophisticated science of wayfinding. See, Polynesian navigators had a toolkit, but it wasn't made of brass and steel. Nope. It was the world all around them. They used the rising and setting points of the sun, the specific paths of stars across the sky. They also read these incredibly subtle clues, the shape of clouds that tend to form over islands, the flight paths of birds that roost on land, and this is the most amazing one, the patterns of ocean swells. To really get your head around their methods, you've got to look at this. This is not a map of land, it's a map of the sea itself. It's a stick chart from the Marshall Islands. And it shows how ocean swells bend and reflect around islands. Those little shells, those are the islands. And the sticks, they represent the wave patterns. It's a physical model of a completely different way of seeing the world.
This is just incredible. It meant that a master navigator could literally feel the direction of an island long before they could see it. By sensing how these land waves, swells that are bouncing off a distant shore, were hitting the hull of their canoe, they could hold a course with insane precision, even on a totally cloudy night. It's navigation by feel, a skill that was honed over an entire lifetime.
And it wasn't just waves. Even Cook's own naturalist, Joseph Banks, was just astonished by their knowledge of the stars. He wrote that they knew a huge number of stars by name and could predict their positions with a nicety far greater than would easily be believed by a European astronomer. This wasn't just folklore, you see. It was precise, repeatable science.
Okay, so the science is mind-blowing. But what was it actually like for the people on these voyages? I mean, this wasn't just a science experiment. This was a matter of survival out there on the open ocean.
First off, their vessels were technological marvels. The double-hulled canoe, or what we'd call a catamaran, gave them the stability they needed to survive the open ocean. And these weren't just boats, they were basically arks. They were designed to carry not just people, but all the plants, animals, and tools you'd need to start a whole new society on an uninhabited island.
And the sheer scale of these voyages is just staggering. We're talking up to 2,000 miles of open water for their longest nonstop journeys. To put that in perspective, that's like crossing a third of the Atlantic, say from West Africa to Brazil, in an open canoe. Life on board was tough, really tough. You could have almost 40 people, entire families, kids and all, crammed onto a single vessel for weeks. The canoes were leaky, so you had to be bailing constantly. Everybody slept on coconut mats on open decks, completely exposed to the elements. These weren't just trips, they were colonization missions. They were a one-way ticket to a new life.
There's this traditional lament that just perfectly captures the gravity of that decision. To set out on a voyaging canoe meant that the people you left behind would literally mourn for you as if you were already gone. It speaks volumes about the incredible courage and maybe desperation that must have driven them out into that vast, empty ocean.
But this legacy of courage and innovation, it didn't just disappear with the age of sail. Actually, you can find its echoes in some of the most advanced naval designs we have today.
I mean, look at this. The basic designs that the Polynesians perfected for stability and speed, they are still at the cutting edge of naval architecture. The outrigger and the catamaran are direct descendants of their voyaging canoes. We use them now in everything from the America's Cup to the high-speed ferries that connect our own modern islands. But you know, maybe the most enduring legacy is the relationship they had with the sea. Joseph Banks marveled that they were almost amphibious. For them, the ocean wasn't some obstacle you had to conquer. It was their home. It was their highway. It was their entire world.
The story of the Polynesian navigators is just this powerful reminder that history is so often written by the conquerors, and that true genius can be found in places we least expect it. It really makes you wonder, what other incredible stories, what other masters of science and exploration have we just simply overlooked?